September 14th, 2020 meeting of the Union County Zoning Board of Adjustment in session. I am Rick Davis, Vice Chairman of the Union County Zoning Board of Adjustment. Also sitting on today's board, to my right is Darren Green. To my left is Dion Edwards and Mr. Larry Britt. Also present, Mr. Jim King, who is the zoning administrator and senior planner. Amy Griffith is the clerk for the Zoning Board of Adjustment. And Mr. Derek Thurman, who is the attorney for the Zoning Board of Adjustment. Now, a hearing of three types: an application for a variance from the regulations of the zoning ordinance, or appeal from a decision or interpretation of the zoning administrator, or an application for special use permit. The order of each case will be as follows. All parties who plan to give testimony per our column must complete the green forms at the podium and then have to be sworn in. The zoning staff member will explain why a permit was designed, was denied, or why a variance is requested, or the nature of the special use permit application. The board may question the zoning staff member. The applicant may question the zoning staff member, and then the applicant presents his testimony for the case. The board may question the applicant. The zoning staff member and persons in opposition may question the applicant. The applicant may present sworn witnesses that will be subject to cross-examination. Other parties wishing to speak pro or con will be given reasonable time to present sworn testimony. They will be subject to cross-examination. The zoning staff member and then the applicant will be given an opportunity for rebuttal. After hearing the case, the board will review the case and render a decision. This is usually done following the close of the public hearing and the board's deliberation. However, the board may elect to take up to 30 days to render a decision. You may remain present during the deliberations, or you may call the zoning staff members after the session to receive a decision of the board. All exhibits must remain with the board. Please hand them first to the clerk for tagging. If your case is not appealed to Superior Court after 30 days, you may pick them up or they will be destroyed. If you feel there is a conflict of interest by any board, any member of the board, or an association that will present your case, please let me know at the start of the case. We are a quasi-judicial board and can only accept sworn testimony. No hearsay evidence is admissible. Appeal from this board is to the Union County Superior Court. You have 30 days from the day the board's written decision in which to appeal in accordance with the NCGS 168-388E. And we ask that y'all please turn off your cell phones and your paper. Okay, the first is the determination of quorum. And it takes 3 to have a quorum, and we have 4. Item B is the approval of the August 10th, 2020 Board of Adjustments meetings. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Okay.
Can I clarify something?
Yes, sir.
The first paragraph indicates that I was presiding. Did you see that? Just to make sure that's good. I wasn't even here. I couldn't have been presiding. Other than that, that's all I said. I'll say.
Okay. We do have a second. All right. Before we go to the public hearing, we'd like to let everyone know that we do have 2 board members out sick tonight and 1 is out of town at work. So we're down to 4-member board tonight. It will take a 3-to-1 vote for this to pass. You do have the opportunity for a continuance to the next month, when hopefully the full board will be here. That's your decision.
Thank you. We'll proceed.
We'll proceed forward. Okay. Okay, the applicant, Neal Properties LLC, is requesting a special use permit to construct and operate an automotive repair and body shop, Calvert Collision, do need to ask this again, is there anyone that wishes to request a continuance on the hearing for any reason?
The applicants prefer to move forward.
Okay. Okay, will all of those who plan to give testimony come forward and be sworn? Okay, if everyone come up, please lay your hand on the Bible if no objections there. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in the matter at hand?
I do.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Oh, one thing, anyone that's going to give testimony needs to fill out the green slips up here at the podium.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. As you were stating before, this is Special Use 2020 SUP02. It is for Caliber Collision. The applicant is McNeil Properties LLC, and the property owner is Providence Commons LLC. The property is located on South Providence Road, almost across the street from the Waxhaw Police Department. This is showing an aerial right here. You'll see the actual lot itself outlined in red. That is the overall development. It's plus or minus 27 acres. What is proposed for you tonight is the proposed out parcel, which is approximately 2.3 acres. Property currently is zoned B4CZ. Went before the Board of Commissioners and was rezoned 2 years ago, almost maybe 2.5 years ago from now. The property itself, and I'll go to the next slide, this was what was actually approved during the conditional rezoning. What the applicant did is they broke the project up into sections, and they were labeled A through F, I believe. And each one of those sections, they identified certain uses that could go into those, but it also said that any use in the B4 was allowed. What they did for some of the out parcels is they said, okay, well, these are ideal places for drive-throughs, and with a drive-through, it requires a special use permit. But under our ordinance, it says if you go through a conditional zoning, then instead of having to go through 2 processes, we'll let you go through 1 process. What they didn't anticipate was any automotive type of occupant going into this, and so they didn't ask for the automotive to be allowed as a use by right, and that's why they're here before you tonight.
Don't have any questions, Mr. King?
What they've provided us with here is a conceptual site plan. With this development, because it's only a portion of 27 acres, we have spoken with NCDOT. NCDOT said that they're okay with us going forward with this without the TIA. However, for any of the other development that will take place on the site, the TIA, which is Transportation Impact Analysis, should be in and approved by staff and by NCDOT. This right here, you'll see one of the 2 entrances coming into the property, and they're planning to have it's going to be a 24 bay with 9 bay doors on the 2.34 acres. They're providing 18 customer parking spaces and 80 storage spaces. We've asked for proposed elevations because one of the things that staff did not want to see is for the bay doors facing Providence Road, especially since Providence Road is going to be widened, and they're going to put sidewalks out there and try to make it pedestrian friendly and all that. We wanted to make it as attractive as we possibly could. And they agreed with us, and they've turned the building so that the side of the building will be looking towards Providence Road, and it will have effect front to it, so. And then this will be the side view, going north on Providence, and you'll see the bay doors there. I'm not real sure about, it looks like a privacy fence, but it almost looks like it was misdrawn here. It looks like it's right up against the bay doors, but the engineer and the architect, something I'm sure that they can fix. So the zoning of this site right here, as I said, is B4CU. The only part that's abutting this site that's actually in the county's jurisdiction is going to be the red to the north and the green to the north. Everything else is actually Waxhaw's jurisdiction. We have reached out to Waxhaw as well to ask them if they had any comments. I was under the impression there might be a representative from their town here tonight to speak to some of those comments that they may have. The land use calls for this to be mixed-use residential. However, as I said, the Board of Commissioners did approve the rezoning to B4CZ. The environmental features on the property, there is that blue line that you see, which is a stream. And I believe that the wetlands have already been mitigated, but they do show on the approved rezoning plan, I believe it's a 100-foot buffer on that stream. And they're also going to use that as a tree mitigation area for where they've taken trees out along the rest of the site. Our ordinance requires that you have a tree preserve area, which is considered the non-buildable area of the property. It's usually the setbacks. And it's whatever the setbacks are before the project takes place. So in this case, this was zoned R40. So it had a 40-foot front setback, a 40-foot rear setback, and 15 sides. So those setback areas are now tree preservation areas. So any tree over 12 inches DBH, diameter of rest height, has got to be mitigated at 125%.
Okay, one question. Where you said where the red line is out showing now, that's the property that's going to be utilized? And you said
Approximately.
it had to be 100 foot away from the stream? Did I misunderstand?
No, they're outside of that buffer area.
Okay.
Yeah, they are outside of the buffer area. Development status shows this as being underdeveloped, and with everything, in close proximity around it being developed. In here again, as I was stating before, the only areas that are in the unincorporated area of the county and under the county's jurisdiction are those areas that are in white here. The shaded areas are all the town of Waxhaw. And as far as transportation, there's improvements that will be taking place. It'll be going from a 2-lane road to a 4-lane road with curb and gutter. Some areas will have median. We'll have sidewalks on both sides, so there's some major improvements the NCDOT has for this area. Staff recommendations, as always, must comply with all local, state, and federal requirements. Must comply fully with the Union County Development Ordinance. Because the overall project, not just looking at what's coming before you tonight, but the overall project is going to require an S2 screen. And so the portion of this, what is before you tonight, that is abutting a residential area, it would have to provide an S2 screen there as well. Needs a approved tree survey and mitigation plan. We have received this. This is no longer needed to be as a recommendation. We received that and it has been approved. Must be developed in accordance with the conceptual site plan. Needs to dedicate right-of-way per the rezoning and construction of the sidewalk. And the construction of the sidewalk is only going to be that portion in front of their 2 acres. It's not going to be for the entire development. However, B&P must be constructed for the entire development at the time the out parcel is constructed. We have spoken with the applicant and they have assured us that they don't have an issue with that. And again, no more development to be approved until the TIA is approved. No grading will be allowed until state approvals and soil erosion control plans from the state have been approved and submitted. And they will need to have the NCDOT commercial driveway permit. And with that, the applicant is present. Here, if the board has any questions. If not, the applicant's present to give their presentation.
Anyone have any questions for Steve?
I just have a question. So the state will issue a driveway permit?
Yes, they've actually sent over to us for the temporary driveway, and we've said that that was all right for construction purposes. And then the driveway permit typically is not actually issued until the completion of the development. It's issued at the very end.
But they will have use of the temporary driveway?
Yes, for construction.
Which one of the recommendations did you say that had been complied with?
The tree preservation area and mitigation.
That's number 4.
I do believe so.
Anyone else have questions for Steve?
All righty, thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Good evening, board members, council. My name is Christopher Duggan. I am the attorney for the applicant and the owner for this special use permit. This property, as Mr. King has discussed, is located on Route 16 in unincorporated Union County. The parcel is, however, it is surrounded by Waxhaw in the Waxhaw area. Property is zoned as a B4 conditional zoning, which, as you know, accommodates the widest range of commercial activities is in the B4. The reason why we're here tonight is because the proposed development, Caliber Collision, requires a special use permit be granted for this general commercial district. So we believe tonight through the testimony of the applicant's engineers, architect, as well as the individual who has performed an impact study on this parcel, that will demonstrate that the proposed development will comply with all regulations and standards applicable to the zoning district. We anticipate showing that the proposed development will not materially endanger the public health or safety, that the development will not substantially injure the value of abutting properties, that the proposed development will be in harmony with the area, and that the proposed development will be in general conformity with the comprehensive plan. As part of the application, numerous documents will be used this evening. I do have a packet that, if allowed, will mark the packet generally as an exhibit, and then I will go through and mark each individual portions of that packet, but just so we're not walking back up and forth here several times, we'll provide these to the members. Yeah, I'll put it on your desk.
While that's taking place, there's one quick question.
Yes, sir.
Back under the, back to findings you just read out. If you go back to number 2, which says the proposed development will not materially endanger the public health or safety,
Yes, sir.
there's a typing error right there. Did you notice it? It says the stormwater will BET vent treated. That typing error needs to be corrected.
Oh, you're referring to the application?
Yes, on your application?
Yes, sir.
On number 2, when it says stormwater, mine says stormwater will BET. Is that supposed to be treated, or what's that word supposed to be?
Yeah, the will be treated on site.
Mine's got BET in the bit. Just cross the T.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. The copy that I have here is, the proposed auto body repair shop will not materially endanger the public health or safety, as any contaminants will be treated on-site. Stormwater will be treated by a master BMP for the development prior to release downstream. Thank you, and I apologize for that typo.
What is the BMP, what does that stand for?
It's best management practices,
Okay,
and that's something that we'll discuss here this evening.
okay, thank you.
Unless there's any questions, I'd like to call the first witness.
Anyone have any questions?
I'd call Mark Keim.
Good evening.
Please state your name for the record.
My name is Mark Elliott Kime.
And
What was your last name?
Kime, K-I-M-E.
K-I-M-E?
Can you please tell the board who you're employed by and what your role in this project is?
I'm a landscape architect. I work for Land Design in Charlotte, and I am the site designer for this project.
And what is the proposed development called?
This is the Caliber collision site within the larger Providence Commons development.
As part of this, part of your duties, were you responsible for commissioning a proposed site plan for the project?
Yes, I was.
And I'm going to show you what I'm going to mark as Exhibit A, or Exhibit 1 here, which would be the first page of that packet that you all have. I'll have you refer to this packet if you will.
Sure.
Can you tell me what is Exhibit 1?
This is the proposed site layout with respects to the Providence Road right-of-way, respecting all setbacks and buffers as required as part of the rezoning.
And what is it intended to show?
Just building orientation, parking lot layout, and screening and buffering.
And you prepared this document?
I did, yes.
I'd ask that, and this is a true and accurate copy of the site layout that would be proposed for the project.
That is correct.
I'd ask to accept Exhibit 1 into evidence.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
That will be marked exhibit 1.
Yes, sir, I'd mark that as Exhibit 1. Looking at Exhibit 1, I know Mr. King has discussed the orientation of the building. Can you tell us, what is the orientation of this proposed development?
So the front door without the bay doors faces towards Providence Road. Any of the bay doors, as mentioned, all 9 of them, will be on the sides of the building and with sufficient screening. And then the majority of the stored parking will be at the rear of the site.
And when you're talking about the rear of the site, if they're looking at their packet, where do you have the rear?
This would be, I guess, plan page north. You can see the buffer at the rear of the site. There's a wall. This is facing internal to the master development.
So none of the vehicle bay doors will be facing Providence Road?
No, they will not.
Have you reviewed the state and federal regulations that apply to this project?
Yes, I have.
And will this project meet all local, state, and federal regulations applicable to the project?
In my opinion, yes.
Have you reviewed the Union County Development Ordinance?
Yes, I have.
And in your opinion, does this project comply with the Union County Development Ordinance?
Yes, in my opinion, yes.
I'm going to move on, if I may, to Exhibit 2. Exhibit 2 here. Can you tell me what we're marking as Exhibit 2?
This is the layout plan from the land development package being prepared for this project.
And is this a document you prepared?
Yes, it is.
And is it true and accurate copy of the layout plans you proposed for this project?
Yes, it is.
And that's to submit Exhibit 2 into evidence, and that's page 2, which at the bottom is L3-00. And what does this Exhibit 2 demonstrate? Or intended to show, I'm sorry.
a more detailed version of the layout plan with dimensions, all setback callouts, material callouts.
Specifically referring to Exhibit 2, is there demonstration on this exhibit as to future right-of-way?
Yes, there is a future dedication for the right-of-way.
And the setbacks for the project, the setbacks from the current right-of-way or from the future right-of-way?
All current setbacks will be measured 40 feet from the future right-of-way as shown on this exhibit.
Okay. And as part of this exhibit as well, is there a demonstration of a proposed sidewalk for the project?
Yes, this proposed sidewalk will be located, assuming future off-site roadway improvements.
And does Exhibit 2, does this show the screening that is going to be applicable to the project?
Yes, along the northern boundary, we will have to install all an S2 screen buffer and meet all buffer requirements along that edge.
So the type of screening around the perimeter of this specific project, what is that type of screening that you're proposing for this particular project?
In compliance with the S2 buffer along that edge.
And when you're talking that end, you're talking to the left of this
Correct.
exhibit?
Yes, that's where we're adjoining an off-site property, and that S2 buffer will, as part of the master development, continue around the property, but only be built at this time for this particular parcel within the development.
So the S2 will go around the entire 26-plus acres?
Yes.
But you're showing here that simply bordering this northern portion of the property, or to the left on the paper here, you have an S2 buffer along that edge.
Correct.
And if you can turn to the next page.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So there's not going to be a buffer on the backside then, as far as any type of screening?
So on the backside, that area of the site is already existing woodlands, and our tree mitigation, we're actually going to capture an area in the back of the site there. So you won't have any view shed into the Caliber site from that direction.
Okay, what about the privacy fence that was shown on the architect's drawing for it? Is that included in this?
No, I think that fence, I believe, was that's internal to the parking lot, screening the bay doors.
And if I may, we'll have the architect come up and discuss that
Okay.
fencing for you all.
Okay.
And you discussed the planting schedule, and if you turn to page 3, which is L5-00, which I'm going to mark as Exhibit 3, what is L5-00?
This demonstrates minimum planting requirements for this project as well. I mean, not only the S2 buffer, but any trees that are proposed along the street frontage and any screen shrubs for the parking lot from that frontage.
And does this document, Exhibit 3, does this demonstrate compliance with Union County Development Ordinance?
Yes, to the best of my knowledge.
That's just in Exhibit 3, the evidence, if I may. You turn to the next page on this packet. Can you tell us what is this EX-1.0?
This plan documents the tree inventory that we had surveyed for the entirety of the project, as well as identifying a tree conservation area that will satisfy any removal of trees identified along the front and northern buffer around the Caliber site. Worked with Bill Smith, urban forester for Union County, in coming up with this strategy to preserve more trees than we were taking out.
And what we've marked now as Exhibit 4, EX-100, that also goes along with EX-11, which is the next page, is that correct?
That is correct.
And that EX-1.1, what does that show?
This lists in detail all of the trees that were surveyed along all perimeters of the site, adding up all the total caliper inches of trees that will be mitigated along the frontage of this property, along with a listing of all the trees that we surveyed that will be placed in a permanent tree conservation easement showing an excess of, we have 1,218 inches to be mitigated, and we are providing 2,117 caliper inches in preservation.
And you said you submitted this to whom?
Bill Smith, Urban Forester for Union County.
And I apologize here, but I'm going to mark Exhibit 5, and I don't have another copy for your honors, but I can get a copy for you. What is Exhibit 5, if you would?
This is correspondence from Bill Smith received today. He has reviewed and approved the submittal of the Providence Commons Tree Inventory Sheet EX 1.0 for compliance with Union County's development ordinances pertaining to tree preservation and mitigation.
So you received approval from Bill Smith for that?
That's correct.
Okay. And that's Exhibit 5. Let's move on in our packet here. L3-01. Can you tell us what that is?
This site plan is showing, providing the sidewalk along the entire frontage of the Caliber parcel.
So this was similar to the earlier exhibit we had, which showed the layout, but this was, purpose of this exhibit is just to highlight that sidewalk area. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And this was prepared by you as well?
Yes, it was.
True and accurate copy of this document?
Yes.
And that's Exhibit 6. Can we go to the next document that's in there? Can you tell the board, what is this document?
This is a letter just verifying, we worked with NCDOT to determine that for this particular use, while there will be off-site roadway improvements as part of the master development, that this particular use would not require any off-site roadway improvements. Only this use could be constructed at this time, and any further development on the site will have to comply with the traffic impact study and all recommended improvements.
And I'm marking that as Exhibit 7. Was that document received by you?
Yes, it was.
Okay, and that's your name up there, Mark Heim?
Yes.
Posted in the CC?
Yes.
So for this particular project, there is no off-site road improvements. Can you discuss a little bit with the board, what does that mean?
So for the master development, we looked at different scenarios with signalization, possibly at Kingston Drive, turn lane improvements, all that might be triggered depending on what the balance of the development ultimately, as far as tenants and users, as far as traffic. But for this particular development, we had SEPI Engineering take a look at the daily trips, and because of the low amount of AM, PM peak trips, determined that at this time for this particular development, no off-site roadway improvements would be required, such as a turn lane or a symmetrical widening for a left-hand turn lane.
Okay. But you'll have to go back to the DOT
Correct.
for any future development.
Yes, any other development on site will trigger a revisitation of the TIA.
We heard a little bit earlier about a BMP. What's a BMP?
BMP is a stormwater best management practice.
And can you describe a little bit for the board what that is?
Depending on the size of the drainage area going to that particular facility, it could be a sand filter, it could be a wet pond, but this is a stormwater control measure that is designed to capture, in this particular case where you're taking what is wooded land and adding impervious surface, capturing that water and then slowing it down and slowing the release of the water at a level that is equal to or lesser than the current rate of off-site flow.
Okay. Is there any treatment of that water before it is released?
It also acts as a water quality measure, yes.
And how does it do that?
It filters out particles by certain mechanisms, whether it's grease traps, or not grease traps, but filter traps, or other types of biomedical or bio-vegetation, such as the littoral shelf.
And this best management practices, are you gonna get conducted just for this specific art parcel at the time of construction?
We have actually already submitted a package to NCDEQ and had that package approved to originally create these out parcels, and that was for the entire development. And any, with the change in how this site is being graded, we will have to revisit that and resubmit that to NCDEQ, but that pond will be for that entire, for the entire frontage of Providence Road, and any additional clearing we are required to provide in order to balance the site.
Okay. So you're gonna be doing it for the entire parcel, not just this little alt parcel?
Correct.
Okay, one quick question.
Sure.
So it's gonna be a pretty good sized body shop. Gonna be a lot of bonded, it's gonna be a lot of grinding, whatnot. Normally, when you go into a paint booth, you're gonna wash that paint booth down, clean it good. What happens to that discharge water?
To my knowledge, that cannot be released into, and that might be a question
Yeah,
for the owner.
I'll have the architect address that question, sir, at that time.
What about runoff from the parking lot?
Runoff from the parking lot will be captured and then directed into the BMP.
You said treated for particulate, what about chemicals? Antifreeze?
I'm gonna have to defer to the architect
Yeah.
or
Well, that-
and the
We
owner
can
on
have
that.
the architect talk about that as well. If the application is approved here tonight, prior to development of the project, will a soil and grading permit be obtained by the state?
Yes, it would be.
And will the DOT, and we've heard a little bit about this, will the DOT driveway permit be obtained?
A permanent driveway permit, yes, would have to be obtained.
Okay, and that's not done now. Why is that?
Presently, we have a temporary driveway permit, which allows you to get onto the site and do any kind of grading and clearing. But ultimately, as we go through the land development approval process, once the plans are approved, then we can apply for a permanent driveway permit.
Are there utilities such as water, sewer available, electric available for the site?
Yes, there are.
Are there any wells on the site?
Not that we have encountered, no.
Were any wells identified during the planning of this project, off-site?
No.
How about garbage collection? Are you aware of what will happen with garbage collection?
The site will have an on-site dumpster collection facility.
So you'll have a private hauler?
Yes.
Was there any adverse impacts identified during the planning on groundwater or subsurface water?
No.
Now, I want to ask you, immediately north of this project, and we can refer back to even Exhibit 1, which is to the left of this Caliber collision to the north. Can you tell us, what is that piece of property there?
It's existing commercial development on Providence Road. I don't know the specific tenant.
Okay, but it's a commercial piece of property?
Yes.
How about to the east of this parcel, or to this out parcel? What is to the east of that out parcel?
Ultimately, over 515 feet, I believe you will run into an existing subdivision, but directly east and is the tree mitigation area between that and the development.
And then mark the document as Exhibit 8. And this is going to be this document here for everybody. Okay, can you tell us what is Exhibit 8?
This is a proximity document indicating the closest point that the Caliber collision site is in proximity to the existing single-family development that is along Majestic Poplar Drive.
And how many linear feet is the corner? And we're not talking about the corner of the building, are we? Or are we talking about the corner of the parcel?
We're talking about the corner of the parcel to the property line is 515 linear feet.
And between this out parcel and that neighborhood, what's in there? What's going to be between those two?
I believe that has ultimately has yet to be decided. It's probably going to be a mixture of possibly apartments or office, but I think that is all speculative at this time.
Along that edge of where that development is, what type of screening will you have?
We will have a 40-foot tree preservation buffer along that property line. It'll still meet the S2 requirements.
And that's a tree plan, mitigation plan that was approved by Bill Smith? that we talked
Yeah,
about?
it was, during the rezoning, it was a 20-foot S2 buffer. During conversations I had with Mr. Smith yesterday, he's asked us to actually increase that buffer edge to 40 feet tree conservation area.
And has the applicant agreed to that?
Yes.
So if this development goes forward for the remaining parcels, the applicant will comply with that 40-foot buffer?
That's correct.
One quick question. On that 515 feet, has there been any studies done on noise impact on the neighborhood behind it? As far as grinding, or doing body work? I know most of the stuff these days is plastic, but there is the older stuff, you do grinding and hammering and beating on.
There has, to my knowledge, not been a noise impact study done.
Do you think there's gonna be any nuisance noise going back to that neighborhood?
I'm going to
Yeah,
defer to the owner on
And I
that one.
think that might be a better question, Chairman, for the architect. And we've marked that as Exhibit 8. Why don't you turn to the next document in that packet? L4-00, and I'm going to mark that as Exhibit 9. What is that document?
This is the proposed grading plan for the project.
And what does it show?
It shows existing and proposed contours, spot grading. It shows wall lengths and typical wall heights.
Now, prior to performing any grading on this project, and especially the south parcel, will you have to obtain any approvals or permits?
Yes, we will have to go through the Union County Land Development approval process as well as with NCDEQ.
So that is after this board, if it chooses to approve it, then you would go forward and get your soil and erosion permits?
That's correct.
And that's Exhibit 9. This document was prepared by you, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And that document, we'd ask to move into evidence. So looking at the staff recommendations, the applicant has, excuse me, the applicant has agreed to a 10-foot wide S2 screening around the entire perimeter of the development, is that correct?
That's correct.
Plus it'll be enhanced with a 40-foot buffer, is that correct?
On the very far back side, not as part of the caliber piece itself.
Okay, along that neighboring development.
That's correct.
And the tree and survey and mitigation plan was approved by Bill Smith, is that correct?
That is correct.
No vehicle bays will be facing Providence Road, is that correct?
That is correct.
And this project will be developed in accordance with the conceptual plan that was submitted to the county, is that correct?
That is correct.
Does the applicant intend to comply with all zoning or conditional zoning requirements?
Yes.
And that was part of the conditional zoning that took place two and a half years ago.
Roughly, yes, 2017, 2018.
And were you a part of that process?
I was.
We talked about the BMP that you're going to develop for the entire site at the time of construction of this out parcel, is that correct?
That is correct.
And you will not do any further developments until a TIA is submitted and approved for the entire development, is that correct?
That is correct.
And that's a transportation or traffic impact analysis, is that correct?
That is correct.
And then again, the grading will be approved by the state once this project is either approved, is that correct?
That is correct.
And the same thing with the DOT permit, once approved, you'll get that from the DOT.
Correct.
Incidentally, talk to the board a little bit. What was the original plan for this out parcel?
When we looked at this out parcel during the rezoning for Providence Commons, this site was envisioned initially as a high turnover sit-down restaurant.
Okay. Was that gonna have any type of drive-through with it?
I believe if I recall, there was the option we had 4 out parcels along the frontage. I believe 2 were allowed to have drive-throughs. I don't believe we identified which one of them as being a drive-through in particular.
A restaurant would have been allowed by right under the conditional zoning that was previously approved by the Board of Commissioners, is that correct?
That is correct.
But you're going to take it and put in a Caliber collision, or the plan is to put it in a Caliber collision?
That is correct.
Unless the board has any further questions, I have no further questions for this witness.
I have one question, I don't know, well, time is one I need to ask. Was there any impact study done as far as the property values and the subdevelopment behind this unit? See if they would affect it, or you have someone that can address that?
I have someone that will address that.
Anybody have any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. At this point, the applicant will call Caitlin McCain.
Good evening.
Can you please state your name for the record?
Caitlin McCain.
And Ms. McCain, where are you employed?
I am employed at TB Harris Jr. and Associates.
And what does T.B. Harris Jr. and Associates do?
We are a commercial real estate appraisal and consultation firm.
And I got a report here that I'm going to mark as Exhibit 10. And I've got a copy for each of the board members. Attached to what I've marked as Exhibit 10 is a copy of your resume and qualifications. But why don't you take a moment and tell the board about your qualifications?
Sure. I have a Bachelor of Science in Real Estate, as well as a Bachelor of Science in Apparel, Housing, and Resource Management from Virginia Tech. I am a licensed certified general real estate appraiser, both in North and South Carolina.
And I understand that you're currently a candidate for a master's,
Yes, my master's in real estate.
and when do you expect to complete that?
In June 2021.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Ms. McCain, you and your employer were retained to perform an analysis to focus on whether the proposed development would have a substantial, or would substantially injure the value of abutting property, is that correct?
Yes.
And did you perform that analysis?
Yes.
And you prepared a report based on that analysis, is that correct?
Yes.
And is Exhibit 10 a true and accurate copy of the report you prepared for this project?
Yes.
What was the purpose of your report?
The purpose of our market impact study was to assess whether or not this project would substantially injure the values of abutting properties.
What information did you use or gather to generate this report?
So we get both qualitative and quantitative data. We go out and inspect the property to assess the conformity with the surrounding neighborhood. We also locate other comparable automotive repair developments and examine their abutting uses and any impacts, if any.
So you not only look at this project, but similar developments that would involve a auto body repair shop and the impacts that that might have had on abutting properties.
Yes.
Did you look to see what types of properties abutted this out parcel?
Yes. To the north, there were commercial land uses. To the east, there is vacant land that comprises the remainder of this parcel. Beyond that, to the east is a residential neighborhood. To the south, you have the vacant land that is comprising the rest of the parcel. And then to the west, you have residential uses as well as the Waxhaw Police Department and a Novant Medical Center.
And this property, did you determine what this property was zoned for?
It is zoned B4 conditional zoning.
In order to determine the impact of the south parcel, how would you determine that impact of the Caliber collision business would have on the budding properties?
We would examine comparable developments that are operating a similar business, and we would examine an impact on the abutting properties, if any.
And can you tell us what you determined when you did those comparisons?
Yes, overall, our data showed that there was no substantial negative impact on abutting properties of comparable developments.
How about whether your analysis determined whether there would be an impact on the abutting properties to this specific parcel?
Our data did not show any evidence that there would be a long-term negative impact to the abutting properties.
And all of this is contained in your report, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
This report, did you look at, when you looked at the comparable properties, you didn't focus just on comparable projects, but you also focused on the actual project here that we're talking about, is that right?
Correct.
And did you look at any of the properties that were, I believe the chairman had brought it up, that were in that neighborhood to the east?
When we are selecting comparable properties to examine, we select and examine properties that are also, they have a similar surrounding development. So we looked and examined comparable automotive repair properties that bordered residential areas.
And it's a bit difficult to actually look at that specific property that we're talking about here, those neighborhoods, and grab a specific piece of property. Why is it difficult?
Just the market we are in. Typically, you could see a area like this directly, I mean, it could border any kind of property, commercial, residential. Finding data of sales, assessments of comparable properties that you can compare, abutting a comparable automotive repair property. You don't have the biggest selection in the world, so we select the most relevant and comparable properties.
Based on your analysis, well, let me back up a minute. What types of information did you use? Where did you get your information?
So we first looked at assessments of residential properties as a measure. So we examined whether or not residential properties that were directly abutting an automotive repair property, did they show a lower assessed value compared to residential properties also in their neighborhood and that are similar property types, but do not abut a comparable automotive development. Did we see a difference? Next, we tried to locate sales of properties that were abutting a comparable development. We examined both residential and commercial. We have a pair of sales in Waxhaw with a residential property that abutted a collision repair service, and we compared that to another sale about 2 blocks away that was not abutting. And then we located 2 commercial land sales in Fort Mill that abutted, they both abutted a Caliber collision. One sale occurred prior to the construction of the Caliber collision, and one sale occurred post-construction of the Caliber collision, and we examined the sale price there.
And what was the impact of that sale price?
Our impact showed that the sale that occurred post the Caliber collision was slightly, price per acre, it was slightly above the sale prior.
What does that tell you?
That tells us that the data showed that there was no evidence that there was a negative impact as a result of the abutting land use.
In your profession, do you see commercial property having a positive impact on neighboring properties?
I can speak to the data we have here. In this analysis, we did see the assessments of the residential properties that were directly abutting the comparable developments did tend to have a higher price per square foot than the properties that were not abutting the comparable developments. One might infer from that that means the proximity to commercialized area creates more demand.
And do you look at assessed values of the neighboring properties as well?
Yes.
Did you review any legal or scholarly articles or studies in preparation of this document?
Yes, we did review a academic article.
All right, and what was that?
The academic article, the author performed a study. In this study, he examined retail uses and their impact on residential developments. His evidence also did not show a negative impact. Long-term, his evidence showed a positive impact within a quarter-mile radius of commercial development.
And can you identify that document that you
Sure.
reviewed?
The study was conducted by Jonathan A. Wiley, PhD, Associate Professor in the Department of Real Estate at Georgia State University.
And Exhibit 10 is a true and accurate copy of your report.
Yes.
Asked to submit Exhibit 10 into evidence. So your overall conclusion, based upon your analysis and study of this out parcel, would be what as to its effects on abutting or adjacent property?
Our conclusion was that this project, as it is currently proposed, did not show substantial long-term negative impacts on abutting properties.
Unless the board has any questions.
Anyone have any questions? You good?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McKay. At this time, I'd call up, Mr. Brett Flory. Can you please state your name for the record?
My name is Brett Flory.
And Mr. Flory, who are you currently employed?
Yes,
And by whom?
Cross Architects.
And are you the architect for this project?
Yes.
How do you spell your last name?
Flory.
S-L-O-R-Y?
Yes.
Should go off the big ones.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay. Mr. Flory, you're the architect for this project, is that right?
That's correct.
And what we've handed up there is 4 pages. And we're going to mark them as Exhibit 11 as a group if we could. What are those 4 pages?
These 4 pages are color renderings, 3D perspectives of the both the corners and pretty much every view of the front of the building, driving north and south on Providence.
And you have photographs of A, B, and C. Your A is looking south,
That's correct.
your B is looking directly across the street, is that correct?
Yes,
And C is looking north.
that's right.
Why don't you discuss with us, and I'm going to go to A, if we could.
Hold on just a minute, we've got some confusion.
Sorry.
We have about 4 pages of the
Yeah.
same thing here.
There's where all my copies went.
Send that back down there.
Sorry, that's my fault. It's going to be a heck of a lot easier than this.
So how many pages are we supposed to have?
4.
I've got 2. I've got 1.
You haven't got two?
Basically, there's the one with the 3 views, and then there's 3 enlargements.
Yeah, so you'll have 1 page that has all 3 views on it, and then each subsequent page should have the specific view A, B, and C from it.
Okay, so that's the first thing, I'm assuming. That's
So
A,
this being the first page,
That's, yes,
then A, B, C.
yeah.
And then A, B, C.
So you go with A, I'm, me and him both together.
so I-
We're in the same spot, that's good. These are the rest of them.
I should have collated them.
Well, that's okay.
hate it when those collators don't work.
Mr. King's a good man.
We need B and C. We got A and B. Do we both have one? Because we have plenty to have that now. That was the problem.
I've got, it's supposed to be 4 pages.
You got B and C? You got B and C?
I got B and C.
This is, I got that. I need B. I need B.
There's A and B right here. This is, supposed to be 4 pages.
I got A, B, and C, and then I got A and B. I mean, A and C, there should be a B somewhere.
I've got A, B, and C.
All right, you good.
I apologize.
We can. All right. And Mr. Britt needs his, and we're good. You got it all. You got B?
I do now.
I thought you got, you
Oh,
got
there
it.
it is. Look at that. There's C. There's A, B, C. And this will be exhibit,
This is going to be exhibit 11. All right, so, looking at exhibit 11, we have 3. And again, I apologize to the board. So we have, the first page of exhibit 11 is 3 photographs of the successive pages, is that correct?
That is correct.
And we discussed looking north, south, and directly across the street, is that
Yes,
right?
yes.
Did there come a point in time during the architectural design of this project that alterations were made to its elevation?
Yes.
Okay, how did that take place and why?
Well, we understood there was a concern for the, kind of the main entry into this development, how it looks, you know, pulling into it and going north of Providence. And so we extended the raised parapet where the sign goes. We extended that back. We extended the porte cochere back to screen, kind of provide more of a architectural element there, kind of stretch the back of the building out towards that direction. And we also raised the fence 2 feet. We did have a 6-foot fence. We now have an 8-foot fence. The fence is going to be a black aluminum or steel picket with a black mesh, opaque mesh attached to the back of it. And that fence will be installed between stone columns. We'll have a stone column at each corner and, you know, intermediates, you know, every 30 feet or something like that. So it'll be a very nice fence that'll blend in with the building in this landscape screening.
And you can see that fence in B of these photographs, is that right?
Yes.
And what is the purpose of that fence?
The fence screens the outdoor storage, vehicle storage area in the back. Caliber doesn't take in totaled vehicles here. If a vehicle's totaled, it'll be hauled out of there within 24 hours. But they do store, you know, if someone brings a car in and it's, most of their cars come in, are driven in by the customer by appointment, because most of their work's driven by, with insurance company appointments. But the car will be parked in the back until it, if, most of the time they try to get it in right when they bring it in. But if they can't, it may be parked in the back behind the fence until the next available stall's ready, the technician's ready for it. But, and then, of course, after it's repaired, it'll be stored back there until the customer picks it up. All the employee parking will be behind the fence as well.
And have you designed caliber collisions before?
Yes, I've done most of the calibers over the last 8 years, over 200 across the country.
What is your educational background, if you would?
I have a Bachelor of Architecture from the University of Arkansas and a licensed architect. I'm a vice president and principal in charge of all the commercial development at Cross Architects.
So, did you do anything with the actual elevation of the structure itself?
Well, this elevation we have, this is our kind of our standard elevation for caliber on this prototype. We have a stone wainscot with a stone at the lobby going up to like a stucco sign banner. And then we have brick on top of the stone wainscot. We have a dark brick band that's recessed that matches the dark black sign banner. The porte-cochere is stone columns with, it's an open steel, exposed steel structure, so it looks nice. It doesn't look like just your average porte-cochere. And it all matches, everything on the building's coordinated. And
Was this specific caliber, was this sunk lower into the surrounding area?
yes, the finished floor elevation on this building is several feet lower than the road, just because we're having to build up the site so much. It's kind of like that's kind of where it's settled in at. But the building will be lower, but not drastically lower. So, yeah, I mean, you're not going to notice it too much. It's the top of the tallest parapet's like 25 feet, so you're going to definitely see the building.
Is this building equipped with a fire suppression system?
Yes, it's fully sprinkled.
And the chairman had asked some questions earlier regarding runoff that might occur inside for body painting and parties. How is that dealt with on site?
So the Caliber doesn't do any automotive repair work in there. It's all just body work. So there's not any floor drains in the shop where they do that work. All the areas where it gets wet is going to be in the detail bay. In the detail bay, we have a drain with a sand oil interceptor. So everything that goes in the detail bay from the car washing is going to go through the sand oil interceptor. Also, there's a utility sink in the shop that runs through the sand oil interceptor. Anything pretty much that's not in the office runs through the sand oil interceptor, but we don't have any floor drains in the shop.
Okay, in the wash bay, do you wash actually before they paint, most people go in the paint booth and wash that area down.
They do maintenance in the paint booth. Most of the cleaning in the paint booth is not with water,
Okay.
but they do, that's like the extreme version. They might do like once a year, and then they'll vacuum it out with a shop vac.
Okay,
But there's not a pit there is a pit in the paint booth, but there's not a drain in the pit.
okay.
And there was another question regarding that fencing that you talked about, this black fencing that's on the side there.
Yeah.
How far away from the doors of the building is that?
30 feet. On the south side, it's 30 feet. On the north side, it's more than that.
It meets all required setbacks?
Yes. And it is the overhead doors are 10 feet tall. So by the time you do a sight line and you're like sitting in a car, you're not really even going to see the overhead doors. Plus, we have little canopies above the doors to just kind of break up that wall back there. And so it's not going to be an eyesore. You won't see the overhead doors. We do have 2 overhead doors under the porte-cochere. One's an inspection bay.
And you're pointing to exhibit, or B,
Yeah.
the photograph is looking
Like
across the street. And there's a car that's parked right next to that building, and you're pointing to those
Yeah.
2, it looks like several windows on it.
Those 2 look like storefront openings to the far right. Those are overhead doors. They will be black aluminum to match the storefront frames. So it'll all kind of blend together. All the overhead doors are closed. They don't leave the doors open. The shop is heated and cooled,
Okay.
so they make them keep the doors closed.
So when we heard a question regarding noise, how is that dealt with on-site?
All work is done inside the shop, so there's not any like loud. Now, the modern body shop is mostly just take a part off, put a new part back on. So there's not a lot of pounding. They do have a frame rack. That'll be the loudest thing in there, but it's not, they don't use it every day. They use it like maybe once a week, and it is inside, so it's concealed. We've done sound studies before on these, and typically the road noise is louder than decibel level than the noise coming out of the shop. They do have a compressor that'll be in the back next to the detail bay, but that compressor has got a very low, it's insulated, and so it's not, I mean, we could stand right next to it right here and have a conversation without even having to talk loud. It's a high-end compressor.
How about lighting on the exterior of the building? What do you
All
do
the-
to mitigate the lighting?
All the lighting here, we don't have any decorative lighting on this building other than we do have LED strips that are mounted to the bottom of the roof purlins under the porte-cochere. You don't see them, they're very small, like a 1-inch profile. But they do light up the porte-cochere at night. And so that's kind of our only feature, is that light coming down in that porte-cochere area.
And will this project, have you reviewed this project in the surrounding area?
Yes.
Do you believe that this project, in your opinion, will be in harmony with the surrounding area?
I do believe that.
Unless the board has any questions. Mr. Floyd?
Anyone have any questions? Larry? Okay.
Paintings. I know, I've been in a body shop before, so, anyway, the fumes, you know, in the painting are quite strong.
Yeah.
How are they mitigated?
So Caliber, I don't know how much you know about them. They're the world's largest collision repair facility. They have over 1,100 stores and over 15,000 employees. And so they're kind of like the guys that were the industry leader in this kind of profession. And they buy the top of the line paint booths. There's 3 companies they work with: Global Finishing Systems, which is the world's largest paint booth company. They're out of Wisconsin. AccuDraft, which is from Italy, and then Garmat, which is out of Colorado. But all of them have similar filtration systems. They have like 4 different layers of filters in there that are changed on a regular basis. They use all water-based paints. So the only thing that does even produce an odor after when you're spraying it is the clear coat. But the filters normally take care of that. I have put these in right in the middle of residential areas before, next to apartments, 3-story apartments next door. And we have so far never had a complaint of, because I've stood here before and told people that if someone has an issue with smell coming from this building, we could put scrubbers on it and then you're not going to smell anything. But I've never had to do that, and to my knowledge, I don't think Caliber has a scrubber on any of their 1,100 plus stores. So the filtration systems in these paint booths they really work. And I can give you some documentation on it, but basically the air coming out of the stack is cleaner than the air you breathe, just the natural kind of ambient air that you normally breathe. Yeah, welcome.
The fence, does it go around all the way around the property?
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Now, we were just going to take the 8-foot decorative fence kind of to the back corner and over on the other side to the property line, and maybe turn it back some to where the trees start. But we weren't planning on like running it all the way around. We would do a same height black vinyl chain link with black vision slats on the back side where you don't see it.
And what about parking lot runoff as far as community?
I believe where you have drains, everything's, I don't think, Is that correct? Everything is piped back to that drainage area back there.
Would those need to be chemically treated? As
Do
far
we,
as,
I don't think so. No, I don't believe we need a filtration system for the storm drainage.
That would have been approved by DEQ.
Yeah. Typically, we don't do that, but there are some areas that require it.
And before construction goes forward, again, you'll have to engage in that BMP, and that would be having approval by DEQ.
That is correct.
Any further questions?
Anyone else? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. At this point in time, that's all the evidence that the applicant has to submit to this board. We request that the board approve the application for the special use permit. We believe if we demonstrated that the development will comply with all the regulations, standards generally applicable to the zoning district, and specifically applicable to this particular type of use. We also believe that we've demonstrated that the proposed development will not materially endanger the public health or safety, that the proposed development will not substantially injure the value of abutting properties, that the proposed development will be in harmony with the area in which it is located, and that the proposed development will be generally in conformity with the comprehensive plan. So unless the members have any further questions, the applicant will rest.
We will have more questions. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, is there anyone presenting evidence against? Okay, could you step forward, please? State your name.
Sure, I'm Martin Lane. I live at 2144 Majestic Poplar Drive.
Martin Lane.
That's correct. And I'm the Camberley HOA president. I'm not necessarily here to speak against. I've got family who have automotive businesses here. I've just got some questions, and I'm sure that they're all in these attachments here, but I haven't seen them. So is that okay if I just ask a few questions here? I've been taking notes back. What I did see did not actually show the sidewalk on the front, but it talked about an easement. What I saw here did not show the sidewalk. I just want to make sure that's included.
That is correct.
And is it an easement, or are you actually paving the sidewalk?
No, there's an actual paving
Okay.
over the sidewalk.
Will there be a crosswalk here?
Would be a crosswalk across the entrance.
Sorry.
Will there be an actual live crosswalk across the front? Does the applicant have any problem with putting in a crosswalk if it comes down to that?
I mean, yeah, I wouldn't imagine. I do know that the town of Waxhaw require, and I know this is not in the town, requires sidewalks along any, so they would require a sidewalk along this side of the property as well. I don't see that on, I know you guys don't operate under the Waxhaw ordinance. First of all, I apologize for my appearance. Today's my day at home with the kids. I've been working on 7th grade math all day, and it is not the way I remember it, brother. It ain't even close. So I don't know if a sidewalk along that side of the driveway going in is an option.
Are you asking if there's going to be a sidewalk along the entire frontage of the development?
The front along 16, but then the road going in.
Oh, the entrance, okay.
Right.
Mr. King, is that something that's required? Not by the ordinance, it's not.
Right.
Okay.
But I know that,
But typically, once the development takes place, they'll most likely have an internal network of sidewalks for the entire 27 acres. Yeah.
okay. I know you guys talked about the privacy, the fence all the way around, but I'm a little bit confused because you talked about a 40-foot buffer at the back and no fence, but then you talked about a privacy fence,
You step back up, please.
and now you're talking about a chain link fence. I'm just a little bit confused about what's across the back.
So along this part of the master development here, this will be a 40-foot
Okay.
buffer here. There won't be a 40-foot buffer on this backside here. There will be the S2 buffer along this side here. And then there's a black chain link fence that goes, it's internal to the parking lot here. So
Right, but across the
But
back side,
there wouldn't be a fence back
that's
here.
my house there, so,
Right, yeah.
right.
We're not putting any fence back here, no.
But across the back here, because, I guess my concern is at some point, whenever this parcel's developed, then those trees will be cut down, there's just
Well,
not.
so this whole entire area here, this
Uh-huh.
is all existing trees that we're putting in a permanent conservation easement. These will never go away.
Okay,
And that solves the tree mitigation for this
Sure.
frontage. So any view here, even if this was cleared, you would never be able to see all the way through
but
here.
that's, I guess that's a question, sorry. Question for you, the tree mitigation, it seems like they're mitigating, for this particular parcel, they're mitigating the trees on another parcel. So this 2.3 acres can be completely clear cut because they're mitigating the trees they're cutting there on another parcel.
We look at this at a development basis, not at a parcel by parcel
Okay.
basis. So since it was approved as a development with multiple out parcels and multiple types of uses, then the mitigation is going to apply. the
But
same
you
way.
don't foresee and I guess you work for them, when this parcel, or when any other parcel is developed, they're gonna be restricted because of that tree
So this
mitigation area.
So this mitigation that's being proposed here is only for these two frontages. This does not allow for any mitigation of this permanent tree preservation area. This area has to stay in perpetuity.
Okay,
And that's a 40-foot buffer?
Yes, sir.
Right. okay. Okay. Now, as far as the noise ordinance goes, I imagine Union County will enforce that?
Noise ordinance is enforced by the Union County Sheriff's Department.
Okay. And you have no idea when that TIA is done, whether they will request a red light there?
Mark? Yes,
I'm not- I
at
know-
that main entrance, they took the signalization out of that, right?
Could y'all step up to the microphone, please?
Yes.
Sorry. And the reason I ask is that the sign out front shows a connection there on Trace Creek, which I'm not necessarily opposed to, I just,
So you're asking
To
about
the
this?
second entrance also. Because I think that when we came up with the second entrance, then we took the signal out because the distance was not, it was just barely there. It's 900-foot separation or something like that.
Mhm.
But
Well,
just-
and we're still examining that based off of change of use and whether the signal's warranted, but I mean, that's still an ongoing study at this time, as far as what that master development's gonna be. As I understand it, the Discounts Club that was approved originally as part of the rezoning for that is not going to ever be built. So they're looking at a possible change of use, probably another rezoning. I'll have to go back before the board, but again, that's all just up in the air right now.
right,
So it depends on the use. I think as intense a use as that was, there was a signal warrant analysis that
Right.
prompted that. If it's some other use, if it's office or residential, it might not warrant it, so.
okay. But you understand what, because the plan shows a connection into that stub out down the street from me. Not this plan. The overall, the plan, the sign that's sitting out front of the property right
Mhm.
now.
And this is to the street in the back that ties into Majestic.
Yeah. And,
But that's not approved at the time. It's
Sure.
mostly just a concept.
okay,
I was gonna say, you can talk to it here.
Sure.
There you go.
So you're talking about.
right, so that northeast corner where you can see where, right,
So this plan only shows, that's just a pedestrian connection. There
Mhm.
is no drive connection. And there is no agreement with this owner to even make that connection right
Okay.
now. So it's kind of a small
do you
little
know who
wedge.
that is?
I don't know personally. no.
Okay. Sorry, guys. You had mentioned that a turn lane was not warranted. I know that from the DOT. I turn in and out of that neighborhood several times a day, and I respectfully disagree. They definitely need a turn lane. I don't know if that's something that needs to be addressed here, would be addressed.
You're talking about a turn lane where? Here?
Here.
So with any other development, there will be turn lanes added to that intersection, just for this particular use.
I thought
because
you said that before any other development, there need to be the BMP or the TIA, not necessarily that it would
Any other-
trigger a turn lane.
Any of this other future development, as this comes online, then we have to go revisit the TIA and build all the off-site roadway improvements. Because of the low amount of trips for this particular use,
Okay,
they said basically we can do this one particular development before we do all those other improvements. They're still on the table.
Right, but when the rest of the development is approved, it will trigger a turn lane, or it will trigger a TIA?
That'll, as part of that approval, we'll have to go through a TIA process, and then we'll have to respond to all the recommendations of the TIA, of which, and Jim, you can, I'm sure there's gonna be turn lanes.
I would imagine, okay. I saw on your plan there, plantings along that black fence wall.
Yes.
To kind of cover that up?
Yeah, it's one of the things we added recently, because as you approach the site from Waxhaw moving north on Providence Road, it does sit down about 3 or 4 feet below the road, but we decided to add a row of small trees, figuring at about that height, the tree branching and growth is really gonna screen that whole side of the building. So between that and the fencing, you should have a nice buffer screen from overseeing any of the bay doors.
Okay. Just one clarification, and I'm sorry, I forgot the young lady's name there. You had said that there was no evidence of long-term negative impact. Was there any evidence of short-term negative impact?
Not.
Step to the microphone, please.
So we examined property assessments. That is where you can get the most amount of data. So that did not show any difference or decrease in value for properties abutting an automotive repair property. We were also able to compare a few sales. As far as the academic study showed that if there is an impact at all, and now they examined every kind of retail and commercial property across the board. If there is any decrease in value, their study showed that it could be during a period in construction.
Okay.
But after completion of construction, there was no evidence.
Okay, all right. And like I said, gentlemen, I'm not necessarily opposed to this, just had questions, and certainly have the HOA, the rest of the neighbors want me here. And I, like you, I'm disappointed that there are no representatives from my town here, which is definitely disappointing, but thank you, and thank you guys.
We believe there's another gentleman here to speak.
Yes, sir.
Sir?
Now, is he for or against?
He's for.
Okay.
My name's Sean Pagano, and I own 2 properties right next to it on the left-hand side of where they're building. I own it's called Fat Man Plumbing, one building, and the other one is Mosquito Troop. So we have zoning C3. So I don't have any problem with this establishment coming in, as long as they, according to the instructions that they laid out from the department. I was really shocked to see how much actually is involved with what takes place and what they have to go through in the price. I'm going to lose my 2 buildings when they widen the road. But being a school teacher, there's no way that I can do what they're doing for a small business. I mean, that's a wonderful thing that, our economy runs on small businesses. But it's amazing that I'm looking at this and seeing what they have to go through to put an establishment in. When they take my 2 buildings, I'm gonna have to sell, because there's no way that a school teacher can go through what they've gone through in order to put another building there. But I don't have any problem with it. There's many layers that they have to go through between the town and the county to get things right, and I'm pleased with what I heard tonight, and I'm in favor of it.
Mr. Kine, question, sir. Your property is located, it is in the city of Waxhaw?
Correct.
Yeah. This
It-
is just kind of,
Yeah.
this is just the one little spot right here, right?
Yeah,
Somehow or another.
it's right on
Just got
the
stuck there.
one
Okay,
side,
gotcha.
it's where that
We're
circle
talking
is
about
on the
donut
left.
holes, aren't we?
Yeah, it's a circle on the left-hand side.
Right, yes.
But,
Gotcha.
and I guess they're doing a 15-foot buffer.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
At this time, there's no more witnesses from the applicant. Thank you.
Okay. Is there anyone else wishing to present any evidence tonight? on the cases that pertain to the presentation of evidence. The board shall now proceed to the discussion and decision portion of the cases. Interested parties are not permitted to address the board during this portion of today's meeting. However, everyone is permitted to remain present and listen quietly to the board's discussion and vote. In order to receive a written copy of the decision, any agreed party must file a written request for a copy of the board's decision with the board's clerk or chairperson at today's hearing of the case. So at this time, all evidence portion of this meeting is concluded on that. Now we'll go into discussion. Anyone have anything to discuss?
It looks like all the bases were covered.
I'm good.
You good with all the evidence?
Yeah.
Let's go through the findings of fact. Does the proposed use and development comply with all regulations, standards generally applicable with the zoning district and specifically applicable to the particular type of special use? Their description is the proposed auto body shop will comply with all regulations, standard outlined in the Union County Development Ordinance and the approved rezoning petition. Guys agree with everyone? Mr. Thomas?
I agree.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. Number two, the proposed development will not materially endanger the public health or safety. The proposed auto body repair shop will not materially endanger the public health or safety, as any contaminants will be treated on site. Stormwater will be treated by a master BMP for the development prior to release downstream. I think all the evidence they have presented has pretty well covered that one as far as it will not endanger. Everyone good with that? Good. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, number three, the proposed development will not substantially injure the value of abutting property or as a closed necessity. Proposed auto body shop will provide a commercial service for a commercial tax base within the Providence Road south quarter for the surrounding community. All right, and I think that we have taken evidence from T.B. Harris Jr.
Yeah, I just add that to that.
Yes.
Impact study indicated no injury of the property.
All in favor?
Aye.
Number four, the proposed development will be in harmony with the area in which it is located. Proposed auto body shop is located along a major thoroughfare with public road frontage ideal for commercial use. It is zoned for it and is in a commercial use area.
Agree.
All agree? All in favor?
Aye.
Number five, the proposed development will be in general conformity with the comprehensive plan. Proposed auto body repair shop falls within a rural center focused on providing small-scale commercial business uses. That good with everybody? Everyone in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right. Looking for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion we approve the special use permit as submitted.
Is that motion subject to the staff recommendations?
So, yes, subject to staff recommendations, which I believe were all met, but we'll make sure they are.
Number four has already been met, and then the rest of them will have to be met before the release. Sound good?
Yep.
All right. Did you have a motion, have a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you for all the evidence presented. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Any other
Fun?
Any other discussion for these?
Thank you.
Do I hear a motion to adjourn the meeting? Second?
Second.
Second. Meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
somewhere else I have to throw it away. I'm never gonna use it.